is like winter gets angry and storms out of the room and then comes back in and says, and another thing. And I don't know. I don't know what to do with that.
You ever remember the hunting on Easter when it snowed? I remember when I was little.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I have found myself doing is preaching from the Old Testament on Sunday nights. And it's kind of interesting. I kind of enjoy it because it's not something that I've done a whole lot in my life. I think that we sometimes have a tendency to overlook the Old Testament because, well, we're a New Testament church, right? We're part of the New Covenant. We're not part of the Old Covenant. But there's some amazing stuff in the Old Testament. And the reason why I find myself in this habit is because I received a chronological Bible for Christmas, a day-by-day devotional chronological Bible, and I'm reading through it. And clearly, if you're going chronologically, where does it start? In the Old Testament, and works its way through. That's right. So, but you know what? Some of the greatest stories of our faith are in the Old Testament. Some of those stories that we need to remember, that we need to understand about, are in the Old Testament. They're not. There's other stuff in the New Testament, but some of those stories that you can grab onto and hold on to, they're in the Old Testament. I mean, Noah and the ark is in the Old Testament. Abraham sacrificing his child to God, having the faith to do that, is in the Old Testament. Moses standing before the Red Sea and holding out a stick and the water parting, Old Testament. There's a song that I almost went back and had Allie look it up so we could play the video for it. But it's by Jeff Moore, and it's called Tell Me Again. And it goes through, tell me again, all the old stories. Because we need to remember them. Tonight I'm going to talk about one of those old stories, but I'm going to look at it from a little bit of a different slant. This story comes out of the book of Numbers. And it's about a guy and his donkey. So we all know about Balaam. We all know about Balaam and his donkey. But I want to talk about it a little bit, and I want to give you a little bit of background first, because Balaam isn't a story that just happened in a vacuum. Balaam is a story that happened in the history of Israel, and some very amazing things were going on at this time. The Israelites were wandering around the desert. They were on a 40-year trek around the desert, because when God had said, I'm going to bring you into the promised land, and they sent spies out to look at the promised land and get ready to go in, they came back and they were scared. So God said, I'm going to take you around, you're going to wander for 40 years. For 40 years, you're not going to get to where you're going. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you, when you think of the Israelites wandering around the desert, you think of a moving campsite? Is that kind of what you think of? A moving campsite?
Yeah.
So did I. And then I saw something really interesting in the Bible. Funny how the Bible has a way of changing our preconceived ideas. But there was this guy, his name is King, well, it doesn't even give his name. He's just called the King of Arab. And that was one of the Canaanite countries. That's all the Bible says about him, except for he had this idea. He saw Israel out there in the desert, and he said, I know what I'll do. I'll go and attack them. So he did. And it went kind of okay for him because he brought back some prisoners. He had POWs. And the Israelites prayed to God, and they said, God, if you will let us get our people back, here's what we'll do for you. We'll completely wipe those people off the face of the earth. And that's exactly what happened. And then the Bible says they lived in those cities. Those Canaanite cities that King Arad was king over. They lived in those cities. And then there was this guy named King Sihon. Sihon, I don't know. They had weird names back then. King Sihon of the Amorites. And the Israelites were out and they were moving, on the move a little bit. And Moses said to him, can we pass through your land? Can we come through? Look, we won't get off the road. We'll stay on the road the whole way through. We won't go into the fields. We won't eat any of your food. We won't touch any of your livestock. We just want to walk through. And he said, no. He said, you may not pass. In fact, if you try to pass, I'm going to come out and fight you. So the Israelites did what any smart country would do. They started walking right down that highway that they asked for permission to go on. And the king said no. And the king said, well, I told you if you do this, I'm going to come out and fight you. So he came out and fought. Probably not the best choice he ever made in his life. Because they were completely and totally routed. And Israel inhabited their cities. And then there was this guy named King Og. He had an easy name to pronounce. King Og of Bashan. And he came out to attack Israel. And as he was coming, God said to Moses, don't worry about it, I got this. Probably King Og would have wanted to have known that before he stepped out. Completely routed. This horde will now lick up all that is around us, as the ox licks up the grass of the field. This amazing force is coming at us, and they are going to annihilate us. We have to do something. I'm just thinking as myself here, but if I was the leader of those people, and that was my thought, my next step probably would have been, let's see what we can do to make peace with them. Let's see what we can do not to get wiped off the face of the earth, not to get licked up as the ox licks up the grass of the field. I don't know how an ox licks up the grass of the field, but I'm going to assume that it's not a very pleasant thing if it's happening to you. I probably would have went out to make peace. Balak had another idea. There was this guy that he had heard about, this prophet named Balaam. And Balak sent some people, and he said, hey, listen, these Israelites are coming, and they're going to wipe us off the face of the earth. But maybe if you come and curse them, we'll have a chance. Maybe if you come and curse them, we'll be able to do something against them. Balaam said, well, I don't know. Let me go inquire of God and see what he says. And God said, don't go. God said, no. In fact, what God said was this: you are not to go with them. You are not to curse these people, for they are blessed. In Old Testament speak, because sometimes the Old Testament uses flowery language, in Old Testament speak, that is absolutely not, do not go. Do not do this thing. This is not what you're supposed to do. If it's over there, you go over there. That's what God said to Balaam. Balaam went back and he said, God said no. God told me I can't. God said it's not going to happen. So all of the people that Balak had sent to try and get Balaam to come and curse these Israelites went back to Balak and said, we went, we asked, he talked to his God said no. Don't know what we're going to do. The Israelites are still coming, and they're going to lick us up like an ox licks grass up off the earth. And Balak said, maybe I just didn't send the right people. Maybe the people I sent just weren't important enough. Maybe if I send some more money, that'll work. So he gets this entourage to go to Balaam. More important people, more money. And they get there and they said, I don't think you understand. The king really, 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 really wants you to do this. He really thinks that you're the only hope that we have. And he's going to give you just about whatever you want. And Balaam had the right response. Balaam said this, if Balak were to give me his house full of gold and silver, kings have pretty big houses. Could you imagine a house, a palace full of gold and silver? Even just imagine this room full of gold and silver. How awesome would that be? But he said, even if Balak were to give me his house full of gold and silver, I could not go against the command of the Lord my God. He should have stopped right there. If he would have stopped right there, you know what the Bible would have said about Balaam later on? He would have been in the hall of faith. And it would have said, Balaam, when they tried to buy him, said no. But he didn't stop. He said, but just to make sure, let me go check with the Lord one more time. Now remember, what did the Lord say? Absolutely never, no way, no how. There is no way that you are going to go and curse these people. Well, maybe there's some wiggle room there, so I'll just go check a little bit. And he went. And this time God said, go with them, but only do what I tell you. And then the story starts to get a little confusing. Because in Numbers 22:22, it says this, but God's anger was kindled because he went. Why was God angry? God told him, go ahead and go. Why was God angry? I think there are a couple things going on here. The first is this. What did God originally tell Balaam? You are not to go with them. Do not go. You are not to curse these people, for they are blessed. This was a very strong statement. This was an absolute no. This was that time when you're asked mom and she says, I am putting my foot down. It is absolutely no. This was that. My foot is down. This is absolutely no. Do not ask me again, because you're wasting your breath. That's what God said. So that's the first thing. God had already said no. But the second thing is Balaam had greed and lust in his heart. Why do we know that Balaam had greed and lust in his heart? Balaam gave a good answer. He gave a strong answer. even if the king was to give me an entire house full of silver and gold, I could not go against the word of the Lord. But wait just a second. Let me go see if I can make him change his mind. That's an awful lot of money, God. That's an awful lot of money. Imagine the things I could do with it. So God was angry. God said, go. But he was angry. And then something interesting happened. And you all know the story. You've all heard it. But I want to look at it from a little bit of a different point of view tonight. Numbers 22, verses 22 to 27. But God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as his adversary. Now he was riding on the donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road, with a drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the road and went to the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to turn her onto the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards, with a wall on either side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed against the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place, where there was no way to turn either to the right or the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. And Balaam's anger was kindled, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Did you notice anything strange in that? The donkey saw the angel. Who was Balaam? Quick interview time. Allie, who was Balaam?
A prophet.
He was who?
A prophet.
Balaam was a prophet. And not a pagan prophet. He was a prophet of the Lord. He identified with God. I can't go against the word of the Lord my God. And he was a prophet. And there's an angel. And he didn't see him. But the donkey did. Clearly it wasn't an invisible angel. The donkey saw the angel. Balaam did not. You know, I think that sometimes there's a spiritual blindness that we can get. And we don't even know that it's affecting us. We don't even know that we're blind. Balaam did not even know that he was making a mistake, because he was so wrapped up in his greed and in his lust for recognition, for money, for whatever it was, that he didn't notice that he was doing the wrong thing. There are times when I ask my wife something, can I do this? And she says, go ahead. And she says it in such a way that I know that if I do that thing, it's the biggest mistake I will ever make in my life. Oh, come on. All of you wives have that same go ahead. You all do. Doesn't she, Andrew? Don't even shake your head. No, don't lie about it. She grew up in my house, I know. Balaam should have known when God said, go ahead, that he was really saying, don't you dare. Don't do this. But he was blind. missed it. And it almost cost him his life. Because what did that angel say to Balaam? I like the way that Don Francisco puts it. I was waiting there to part your hair when you and my sword connected. Think about that for a second. That angel was waiting there to kill Balaam. And to be fair, I think that that angel was God. And the reason why I think that that angel was God and not just an angel of the Lord like the text says is because every place where it uses the term an angel of the Lord and the person falls down in worship, if it's an angel, the angel tells him, get up, don't worship me. But this angel of the Lord did not. This angel of the Lord let him stay face down, face in the mud, humbled. He came face to face with God and almost faced God's judgment because he had a spiritual blindness that would not allow him to see the danger signs along the road. God gives us danger signs. He gives us things that we can look out for, that we can see if we just open up our eyes. But the problem is, too many of us are wandering around like, if you guys could see what I can't see now, you would be amazed. I can see my watch, but if I go too far out now, I can't tell what time it is anymore. And that's the way some of us are when it comes to our spiritual life. When it comes to the things of the Spirit, we are so blind that we can't see. Why? Because we're so wrapped up in things that we shouldn't be wrapped up in. If you took a picture of me without my glasses on, delete it now, please. Okay, good.
I already have plenty of person pictures of that. You have them too.
You behave. There could be an angel of the Lord waiting for you if you don't watch yourself. But God always gives us warning signs. He always tells us. 3 times God gave warning signs to Balaam. The donkey saw the angel in the vineyard, so he went the other direction. The donkey saw the angel in the way right here, so he pressed up against the road. So that Balaam wouldn't run head first into the danger. Are we ignoring the danger signs? Are we ignoring the danger signs in our life? I wish I could say that this story ends well, but it doesn't. The story does not end well for Balaam, because what happens is after Balaam gives the quote-unquote curse, it turns out to be a blessing. So Balak is upset with him. And Balaam doesn't want Balak to be upset with him, so he comes up with this ingenious plan. He says to Balak, get your beautiful women to go there into the Israelite camp and have sex with the Israelite man and marry the Israelite man. And you will entice them to turn their back on their God, and God will curse them for you. So like I said, I wish I could say it turned out well. Balaam had his opportunity. He even had the time when he was face down in front of God. And he did what God wanted him to do. But then he turned his back again. Where are you tonight? What are you doing? How are you living your life? Are you ignoring danger signs? Are you not even seeing danger signs because you're blind? I got to tell you. I don't know what it is. The sermon that Pastor Holland preached this morning, it was very interesting to me because I've heard myself saying some of those same exact things over the past few months. And I've heard other people saying those exact same things over the past few months. I think that, well, he called it a wake-up call this morning. I think that God is giving us a wake-up call. And he's saying, you better take a look at the way you live your life. You better take a look at the things that you're doing. You better take a look at who you are. And what you say and what you do, it better start to line up. Don't be like Balaam saying, even if you give me all the money in the world, I'm not going to do this thing. And then turn around and try to find a way to do this thing. Because God will figure it out. We are spiritually blind. God is not. He sees. He knows. Don't miss the danger signs. The last time that Balaam is mentioned in the Bible, it is not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. The last time that he's mentioned in the Bible is in Jude, I believe. And he's mentioned in the same breath as the Antichrist. Because he turned Israel away from following God. Don't be Balaam. Don't be Balaam. Israel was on a roll. Things were going great. Yeah, they were wandering around in the desert. But they were conquering cities and they were occupying them and they were living in them. And they were doing everything that God told them to do. And God was with them. And it turned out bad for Israel too, because Balaam's plan was a brilliant one. It worked. Send your beautiful women in there. They'll entice the men. And once you entice the men, you get everybody. It was a brilliant plan. But God had a better plan. And even though Balaam's plan worked, and even though Israel turned, God still sent redeemers to lift up Israel throughout her history. God sent redeemers. In the book of Judges, we see them all the time. Some of them have really cool names like Othniel, Deborah, Samson, deliverers. Leading up to the greatest delivery of all times, Jesus. Balaam had his opportunity. He was face to face with God. He could have turned. He said the right things then, too. I'm sorry. I will listen to you. I will do what you say. And then he allowed himself to be seduced. By money, by power, by fame, by whatever it was. Whatever it was that got him. We don't have to be that way. We don't have to be Balaam. We don't have to be spiritually blind. We can stand up like Balaam did and say, even if you give me all the money in the world, it won't be enough to get me to go against the Lord. And we can actually mean it. We can actually mean it. We can be new. We don't have to be stuck in that. Let's pray. Lord, you see where we are. You see what it is that we're doing, how it is that we're living, just as clearly as you saw Balaam. Just as clearly as you saw what was going on. In that moment, you see us. And just as intimately as you appeared to Balaam, you appear to each of us. And Lord, there is nothing that you offered to Balaam that day that you don't offer to us, and nothing that you offer to us that you did not offer to him that day. For those of us who maybe we find ourselves being seduced by those things. And we all like things. They're glittery, they're sparkly. They buy other things. We all like those things. But maybe we find ourselves being seduced by those things to turn away from God. To not do what God has called us to do. To not live how God wants us to live. Because it's hard. Because we have a different thought. Because we think God will be okay with it. Lord, if that's us tonight, show us. Reveal it to us. Take the scales off our eyes so we can see. You've called us to be your people. Balaam was supposed to be your prophet. Part of the people of God. Which is one of the great ironies of this story, because Balaam means not of the people. That you were willing to take someone who was not of the people. you're willing to take us and make us of the people of God. And we thank you for that. And Lord, for those of us that aren't in that place, for those of us where things are going good, let this be a warning. Let Balaam's story be a cautionary tale for us all. There was a time when things were going good for him too. There's a time when everything was right spiritually for him. Lord, let this be a cautionary tale for us, that we keep close tabs on our life, that we look at what's going on in our lives, the things that we're allowing to influence us, the things that we're allowing to speak to us. And we do not let them take us to a place where we find out that we're blind, that we've been blinded. Lord, may we all, tonight as we get ready to go from this place, as we get ready to go do whatever it is that we have to do, as we go through the week, help us to stand firm. Lord, give us eyes to see. Give us ears to hear. That we won't be blind to where you're leading. We won't be deaf to what you're saying. Thank you, Lord, that you do this. That you empower us with your Holy Spirit to go and live not like Balaam, but like your children. Thank you, Lord. We love you. We praise you. We give you all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I think you were trying to pick out a song, but I was all over the place with that word. There we go. Make this your prayer tonight. Soften it up with oil and wine. Wash me anew in the wine of your love. Lord, that is our prayer tonight. Where there's hardness in our heart, that you would soften it. Lord, that you would draw that new wine out of us. That we would be what Paul wrote about us. That we would be the fragrance of God in this world. Everywhere we go, to everyone that we see. Lord, that we would be that new wine. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. I'm going to invite everyone to come forward. Spend some time just praying. Nothing structured, nothing planned, but spend some time praying. If you find yourself in that place where your heart is hard, God is able to soften it. If you find yourself in that place where you're following or doing things that you shouldn't do or listening to voices that you shouldn't listen to, God is really good at giving us new ears. Ears to hear. He's really good at taking the scales off our eyes so we can see for real. So let's just spend a few minutes as Sarah continues to pray. I'm not going to lead this, just pray.